Because leaders in the C-suite especially are really concerned about what are all these new trends going to do to my business model, and the everything's moving. And so how can we deal with that anxiety? Welcome to Acton Line, a product of the Acton Institute for the Study of Religion and Liberty. I'm Eric Cohn, executive producer. Managing a business is a challenge no matter the context. Talent comes and goes, supply changes, and there frequently isn't the ability to achieve everything you want. Every day, new constraints move in and out, creating roadblocks to the next goal. There may not be one solution, but co-founder and managing partner of Michigan Software Labs, Mark Johnson, says strong company culture is the foundation of a successful company. In this episode, Acton's Director of Programs and Education, Dan Churchwell, speaks to Mark about becoming an entrepreneur, managing the ever-changing constraints of a business, and why it's important to be a good steward to both clients and colleagues. You can find additional resources in the show notes for this episode, as well as find previous episodes of Acton Line on our website at acton.org/actonline. And if you like this program, you can help us reach even more listeners by sharing it with a friend and leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We welcome your comments as well. Acton Line is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.
Today we are joined by Mark Johnson, co-founder and managing partner at Michigan Software Labs. From an early age, Mark has enjoyed tinkering with technology. He taught himself how to write code at age 11 and developed an HTML website offering snowboarding and wakeboarding advice, which eventually sold to the company that became About.com. After earning his undergraduate degree from Hope College, Mark earned his MBA from Cornerstone University, as well as a leadership certificate from Harvard University. Today, Michigan Software Labs is recognized as much for its culture as its software solutions. In fact, it was the only software company in Michigan to receive Inc. magazine's Best Places to Work award. Mark enjoys solving challenges by uniting people around a common goal, and at Michigan Software Labs, he leads the charge for custom software solutions for clients ranging from middle market to Fortune 500 companies. On the leading edge of technology, culture, and innovation, he is a member of the Forbes Technology Council and a frequent contributor to Forbes.com. Well, Mark, welcome to Acton Line.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's a delight to have you on. Thank you for being a guest at our annual business conference as well, Business Matters, that has recently concluded. And I just felt like we didn't get enough time. You were on a panel discussion and there's just a lot, really great information there, but I wanted to sit down and just have a little more extended discussion with you. And so really thank you for joining us in the studio.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
So, I mean, if I'm reading your story correct, back in 2008, your wife gave you, one day gave you a list of things to do, a honey-do list, and the basics that we all, get, mow the lawn, do the dishes, those kinds of things. But she also asked you to see if you could help build an app. I don't even know if that's what she called it back then, or just how could she listen to the radio on her phone? Mm-hmm. And that was in 2008. And then you developed the company and started the company Michigan Software Labs in 2010. So bridge the gap for us, from that original request from your wife to now launching this very successful company.
Yeah, so the story goes, I guess the lesson in the story is listen to your spouse.
That's great.
They have the best ideas, but she had a need to have an app, and she would go around and run around Reed's Lake, and so she wanted to have something that she could listen to, and it was a station that we really loved, and she was able to. It took me about 6 months to program the app and donate it to the station. She was able to listen to the radio, and really,
the gap came in when Josh and I had met, and we were friends, and he's like, hey, I saw you built the iPhone version. I'll build the Android version. And of course, he's a professional programmer, so it took him a day after it had taken me 6 months. And we were able to donate these apps to the station. And that first weekend that we had, they had about 100,000 listeners. And so we started to get, requests from all over the place. So
let me stop you. This is totally rude. But back in 2008, I mean, right now, my kid, Spotify, there's all these apps. Every radio station has an app. Yeah. What was the environment like in 2008? I mean, was that new?
Oh, yeah.
Or was it just new for this particular station?
No, there was not a lot of apps on the App Store. So we were one of the earlier apps. And so for you to be able to develop an app and then have people download it, it was pretty new. And the iPhone had just come out, and she had an iPhone, and of course that's what we built it for. But it was this whole new ecosystem was being created in the App Store. And because you didn't have a ton of choices yet. You had Pandora and some others,
sure.
But you were able to download it and actually listen to a station that you loved. So it was pretty cool.
So let's get back before I interrupted you. 100,000 people were downloaded and were using it?
Yeah, it was amazing. I think because of the choices, if you don't have a lot of choices, you just download it. But yeah, there were people from all over the world that were listening. And so we were super grateful to be able to reach them with that station. And I think the other part that we learned is that we didn't want any credit for it. We didn't even want our names on it because we didn't want to get bug reports and things like that.
Sure.
But they put our names and personal emails and cell phones on there, and so we started to get lit up by people that needed apps, for their company or if they had an app idea. And it was it's like starting a company by accident. Obviously, we don't believe in accidents, but
sure.
There was this just this flurry of calls and requests that we got, and from some major companies that needed apps.
So what industry were you in? You said this was kind of by accident, or you did it to help your wife. Were you in app building at the moment, or what were you doing?
No, I've had a background in business and marketing, and growing up we had websites and things that we would build, but this was really, I wasn't in technology at the time. Josh was a professional programmer, and I still think he's one of the best programmers in the state, if not the whole region, because he just has a way of solving problems and how he sees something, and very efficient with what he does.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, let's I guess go back then. Before 2008, did you always want to be an entrepreneur? Is that something that was built into you, or is this something, like you said, happened by accident, if you will, or how did you grow up in relation to technology?
Yeah, so I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. So both of my grandfathers were entrepreneurs. One, had the Forsland Furniture Company, which is kind of a well-known name here in Grand Rapids, and the other one had electrician business. And so my brother and I, when we were 10 years old, we decided we were going to start a clock company. And so we had made clocks in the shape of Michigan, and we'd sell them door to door. So I would do the sales, he'd do the manufacturing, and we just like to create things. We wanted to be people that were doers, and were taking action.
Where did that come from? Just literally you observing, or were there like rituals in your family, either grandparents or parents? How did that really develop in your life?
Yeah, they had a huge impact on us. I think, one of my grandfathers would, he would talk to you like you're the only person on earth, and just had that focus and the ability to connect with you. And he would talk the same way to the janitor as he would the CEO or the governor, and just had a really personal connection. And so he encouraged us to go into entrepreneurship and leadership and just trying to make a difference out there. My other grandfather was really good at data and analytics and, seeing the numbers, how they're going to play out in real life. And so just learned a ton from both of them, and the ability to, create value where it's hiding.
So other than family, I mean, who encouraged, or maybe on the technical side, did you have computers growing up? Is that, you hear stories of people, taking stuff apart, et cetera. How did technology in particular, how did you use it or look at it as you were younger?
Yeah, so we would have a website, and the website would be for snowboarding and wakeboarding advice. And so we got a computer, and this is, again, early days of the web, and we were able to launch these websites that just had advice and had images and ways for people to interact with us through a discussion board.
And this was your idea?
Yeah, we were kids,
okay.
And so it was fun. But our parents both instilled in us, too, this idea of, you want to be a creator, try and think of something. So my dad was an electrician. My mom worked in scientific research. And they just had this bent towards, creating and delivering value. And so even early on, it was technology. We were messing with things out in the barn and trying to, create whatever we could stay out of trouble.
That's really great. And so when your wife came to you with that, request about the radio interface, for her iPhone, where did you start? Like if you weren't a professional developer, what did you read? How did you get that moving?
Yeah, so the first thing we did was we actually just sketched it out on a blank piece of paper, kind of what it would need to do. Here's the functionality, what it's going to do. And then I actually went over to Barnes & Noble and I bought the Dummies book. And I was like, I just need a 101 version of how app development works. And they actually had one of the first books. So back in the day, it was Objective-C. Now it's Swift and all these modern technologies. But back in the day, it was Objective-C. And we were able
And that's the name of the platform or the software that's used?
Yeah, that was the name of the programming language. So think about a programming language like JavaScript or Python. Yep. It was just a version of that.
Okay.
And so we were able to learn a language like learning French. And you start to learn how to speak it, and then you start to learn how to write it. And we were able to create the application using what was called Xcode. So Xcode was actually the system that you built it in and allowed you to deploy it to the App Store.
That's fantastic. What did it look like then? I mean, how did you troubleshoot that? How did you get like the R&D? How did you get it up and running? Did you have to, or was it just flipping a switch and it turned on and it worked?
It was a lot of trial and error back in the day because, again, there's not a lot of apps out there at the time. And so we had to kind of learn by just making a lot of mistakes and figuring it out. And the ability to connect then to the station and get their right streaming credentials and then be able to broadcast that.
I just love that. So when it actually did, come to fruition, what did you say, about 6 months? Or?
Yeah, it took me 6 months. It took Josh a day. 6 hours maybe.
There's a story there somewhere, And I love the idea, but when you gave this to her, did you realize what you had done?
No, we really just wanted to make her happy. So we weren't thinking about like, oh, yeah, someday we're going to have this, successful company or anything like that. It was really just to check off the honey-do list. And I wish I would have saved that paper.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That'd be great to frame.
Mow the lawn, do the dishes, build an app.
Yeah. So that was in 2008, and if I have the timeline right, you started Michigan Software Labs in 2010. Is that right?
Yeah, we had a professor. So I was at business school, and we had a professor that said, I can help you guys with the LLC because he knew about that and was able to help us put together some documentation, introduce us to the attorneys and the right CPAs, and so we were up and running in 2010 is when we incorporated.
All right. And what was the idea when you look back at those nascent days, of starting the company? What was your hope? Initially? Yeah,
initially it was to fulfill all the demand that we were getting, and so the idea was we were going to try and build it with local experts and people that we knew that were doing software development. And so specifically around apps, I think we had a 3-word tagline. It was "We make apps," and it's really pretty similar to what we have today. Obviously, we're doing a lot more complexity now. But back in the day, it was, if you searched for Michigan app developers, Michigan Software Labs was coming up. We were number one because we had, kind of a focus on app development.
So you're in business school at the time, you said.
Yep.
So when the radio station decided to connect your contact information or say thank you or however that worked, what did those initial requests look like? Where you had the idea that this could be a company, what requests were coming inbound?
Yeah, so a lot of it was, we have to find a company that is, a trusted resource. They're onshore. They're not off in some other country. They're local people that we can meet with face to face to build the apps. And so, but some of the deals were enterprise, and so these were large, multinational companies that were coming to us needing apps. And a lot of what it was is just trying to solve a business problem that they had. And so one of the early ones that we got was from Volkswagen, and they needed to hire Michigan app developers to be connected kind of to their ecosystem in automotive. And so they needed apps to be able to, do things in manufacturing that they hadn't done before in terms of checklists and things like that. And we were able to be that local group that they could meet with. And
so were you doing, I guess, revenue building before the company, in that 2-year space? Did you say yes to that and build that or?
Yeah, the whole team. Josh kind of went first because he was more technical. I was basically dead weight. We don't
I doubt that, but
Mark programming anymore. I think that was the first and last app they let me build. So, which is good. But starting to build a team around Josh, and he's the software expert, and he was the person that could say, all right, this is how we're going to do the architecture. This is how we're going to think about building a team. And he was at GE at the time, and so we really built the whole team around him. And we started to get some contracts that were longer. And so he was thinking, all right, I've got a year here, that paid my salary. I can jump ship here and take a risk on that. Again, it was his wife that had to approve.
Sure.
Because obviously you've got a young family and you're thinking about all the complexities of having a business. And when she said yes, we knew we had something.
Wow. I love those stories. I mean, so, on your website currently, you showcase the idea that at Michigan Labs, human-centered research always drives design and development. Can you explain more about that distinction? Why do you showcase that idea of human-centered research?
Yeah, so humans are the ones that are using the software. And so if the software works perfectly, but there's no humans involved, then it's not going to be effective. And so for us, we really think about that experience and we have if you come to our office in Ada, we actually have cameras that'll, look over your shoulder and see how you're using it as a new user. And this works for any industry, whether we're building an app for healthcare or financial technology or logistics or, consumer-based apps. How is the user going to experience each button? How are they going to make sure that they're getting the relevant information, right on the screen?
So back up, you say the camera will look at, and so how your like biodynamic, how your body is connecting with the buttons, et cetera. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, everything from what seems confusing to what seems like this is a great touch target. This is a large, area that I can, use the app with. But every industry is different, and we actually spend a lot of time out listening to users. How are they going to use it? What's important to them? What features would they like to see? But the big lesson we've learned is if you can connect the app to how a user is going to use it, you're going to be successful.
Yeah, I love that. And so when you're starting this company, it looks like you settled on 4 specific core values. Build like we'd like it built for us, partner with humility, grow through constant curiosity, and be better together. Why, when you're building a company, it's kind of like you're co-creating, right? You have the ability to set the stage or the angle for where you want to focus on. Why those 4?
Yeah, so when we sat down, and I still remember Josh and I, with a lot of caffeine, the big B coffees or whatever we were drinking back then. We said, if we were going to design a company from scratch, what would we want the values to be that we would actually want to do business with this company? And a lot of the nuance of technology is that there's a lot of ego and there's a lot of pride and there's a lot of this, we're going to do it and we're going to, kind of crush the competition. And we wanted to focus on partner with humility. Like, how would we actually want to work with a company, or how would we want them to build new software? And so that allowed us to frame it as not being the business owner yet, but really being a customer of the business or a client of the business. And those values still are what we follow today. The Better Together one really is just about our team. How we're gonna treat each other, how we're going to prioritize the ability to encourage each other and constant learning, because we are a people business at the end of the day. The people are doing the work for the clients and trying to create that value for the client.
And what does it look like in your company as you peruse the website, which we'll link in the show notes? It looks like you have a mix of developers and very technically minded people, but then it seems like there's a consultant side of your business, or maybe it's just the sales, but you're trying to listen. Like what's the process if I were to come to you, and it probably there's probably a lot of variables here, but work with me. If I were to come to you and say I need an app built in lot of West Michigan is manufacturing, right? I have a manufacturing space. I need an app built. Walk me through just kind of the basic process as a new client comes to you. What does it look like?
Yeah, so it really is trying to be consultative and trying to really focus on where that value is hiding. And so a lot of times clients will come to us and they'll say, we have this business problem. We're not going to tell you guys how to solve it. You just have to figure out how the software is able to support that. And so we'll sit down, we'll do a product strategy phase, which is essentially a few-week phase that we're trying to prioritize. How can we get the most value for the kind of the least amount of effort into a project to try and get those quick wins? Because the worst thing you can do is just create this overbloated software that's not really serving anyone and continues to
that's
grow.
never happened to
never happened to anyone. But the software is never going to be done. Facebook, if they had stopped developing in 2006 or whenever they came out, they wouldn't exist as a company. And so companies have to innovate. They're continuing to have to, create this new value for their users. So we sit down, we really map out what we're trying to do, where's the quickest point to value, and then building from there.
Where can you give me a concrete example of like a problem without obviously giving away trade secrets or anything? Can you give me an example of what kind of problems our business seeing, or is it just so varied? But like, what's a concrete problem that some of your software development has helped to fix?
Yeah, so I can point at maybe some more human ones, and then I'll talk about some more enterprise ones, if that's okay.
Yeah.
But right now we're working on a project for a company that's trying to enable blind and low vision users to navigate the world. And so think about not being able to see and being able to navigate with a smart cane that's connected to your phone, whether it's Android or iPhone, and giving you verbal feedback of, here, turn right in 15 feet, and then now you've arrived at your gate. And so we're working on that, and we're super excited about that technology and how it's going to help blind and low vision individuals navigate the world around them.
So do those smart canes exist? So that's
They
a hardware that okay, and you're wanting it to speak.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've built the ability to speak to it, and it's launching this year, and it's super exciting to think about not just indoor but also outdoor navigation and helping a community like that be able to have the freedom to travel.
What an absolute what a gift to those clientele. Wow.
Yep. So that's more of a nonprofit example. And then obviously we have a lot of the enterprise examples and serving the Fortune 500, and really what they're coming into, again, it's a business problem. So they say, either we need to increase revenue or we need to, use an app to increase our efficiency and, find where that value is hiding. So we're able to come in and build a solution. Sometimes it's an app, sometimes it's a web app, sometimes it's a custom IoT solution, Internet of Things solution. If you're working with a large manufacturer, a lot of times they have all of these different data points that are coming out of the factory.
Right.
And so how can you leverage those to create value and to improve efficiency?
A friend I was talking to, I think the company she works for is based out of Israel, but they even talked about it's a manufacturing company, or it's a technology that helps manufacturing companies know when their machines are going to break down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And is that what you're like? It's talking or letting people know about? Is that the kind of efficiency you're talking about? So somebody can come in and either service it or fix it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We've done that with some large companies. Predictive, response rather than waiting for it to break. If you know that it's going to be an issue in a little bit, then you can predict and take action on that. Because if the line keeps running, everyone's happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a business sector that you like to work in, or are you across the board? Do all kinds of companies work with you, or is there a featured one that you're like best or well known for?
I think we're getting more well known in certain, logistics and supply chain areas. But for us, really, it's about solving that business problem. So we solve them in healthcare and fintech and, consumer products and manufacturing. It's really more about the problem than it is about the solution. So sometimes you are just building a web app that users are logging into, getting data and making decisions. But other times it is, there's a connected device here and it's going to connect, and we need to, connect it to all these different reports and analytics in order to find how to solve that problem.
And isn't one of the struggles, I think, in Europe, I think there's a law, either it was passed or is about to be passed, about interoperability? Like when you read about Internet of Things, and there was it wasn't a joke. It went viral. It was hilarious. But a few weeks ago, somebody found that it was either their washing machine or dryer that connects to the Wi-Fi. It was down. He could see his usage, and it was either his washer or dryer was downloading like a lot of information. He's like, why is the biggest draw on my Wi-Fi my dryer? And they were trying to figure it out. And it was a pretty funny technical thread, but. Are you finding that there seems now there's an app for everything, and another complaint is like for parents. I know you're a parent, and I got 4 kiddos, and they're in sports and educational things. And everybody, they think for efficiency's sake, well, there's an app, and we'll communicate. All of a sudden, I have a tab on my phone, and my kids, under their little umbrella, I got like 6 or 7 apps just for their little. And I don't know if that's efficiency. Sometimes I wonder about that. I mean, are you, it seems like apps or interoperability, things don't speak to one another. The apps are hyper specific. How do you think philosophically about what you're doing? Or is that you're kind of, obviously company specific, design specific, but as a company culture, do you have, conversations around those kinds of topics?
Yeah, we really try and reduce the noise. And so if it really is a specific problem or function, if it's a one-function app, that's probably not going to be a good fit. And especially if it's being built for consumers, it needs to have a lot more features. There needs to be a reason why you need to use it multiple times. And so, I think you're referencing all the, the different apps for communication, but even just think about how you experience television right now. And the ability to watch live TV. I don't even know how many logins you have
exactly. Totally.
to just watch, the sports. And so I think that it's gone, apart, and it's going to come back together. And so there'll be some core technologies and things that we use over and over again. And then there's some that aren't useful. And so it's whatever apps are the most useful are going to win.
Did you, when you were in business school, and again, this is emerging in that same time, and you're thinking about starting a business, what did you, what were you thinking about, like starting a business, and how has it actually turned out? Like what are some of the sticking points, or what were some of the harder things you've had to go through as not only a creator of a business, but then you've persisted like 14 years in now. What are some of those sticking points or harder things that you've had to deal with as an owner?
Yeah, I think for us, because it is a people business, that you're enabling others, you're encouraging others, and I have the gift of encouragement. Like I like to, see someone that's down and try and help out and, get involved in that way. And a lot of the challenges that you face are related to where the constraint is, and the constraint is always moving. So sometimes it's talent, sometimes you can't find enough people,
right.
And other times it's the supply and the ability to create pipeline and new projects. And so for us, really just watching that and trying to be a good steward of the business that we have to try and see how it can impact the world. And so for us, I think the challenge has been always moving, and that constraint is, as the leader gets better, everyone wins. And so for us, it's really about improving our leadership, and we're involved with a mentor, and they're really helping us think through some of these challenges too.
And is that a mentor on just the business, like how to create a healthy business, a virtuous business? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, they're.
Or are they technical too?
No, they're not technical. They really help people to solve problems, and so our mentor has been really good at connecting different individuals and trying to resolve conflict. And so it's maybe it's leaning more towards a therapist than it is a mentor, but we're trying to learn from their life experience. And they're in their 70s, and so they've gone through a lot of things that we haven't seen yet. And so we're able to just sit with them and get mentored by them. Oh,
well, that's invaluable. I mean, that's very needed in a lot of businesses. What do you? I mean, right now, in today's climate, I was just reading the Michigan Business Journal, or Cranes, I think it's called. Right now in West Michigan, we have listeners from all over the world actually, but in West Michigan, it seems like housing is tight, industry is still hiring, low unemployment, and what are you looking for in an employee? And I know again you have a wide array of who you look for, but what are you looking for in a new hire? What's a good employee?
Yeah, so really three things stand out, and there's more, but hunger, humility, and smarts come to mind, and that's obviously from Patrick Lencioni. But this idea that you want someone that has that hunger, that drive, that's going to go out and solve problems. So rather than you constantly having to move them forward, they're out looking for problems to solve. And then the humility, no egos. Egos are the number one thing to ruin a team environment. If someone says, "I've got all the answers, you have to come to me," that's just going to ruin your culture. And then smarts, they need to have this ability to solve problems, but also learn how to interact with people. And so a lot of times they're not getting something done on their own. You think back to your school projects. If you have that one person that's doing all the work, not going to be as effective as if the whole team of 4 is doing it. And so for us, that smarts comes into not just doing your individual work, but also how you work together.
It's like that classic meme. I used to be a professor, and one of my students showed me this meme because they were doing a group project and they were complaining about a certain member of their team. And I don't think they created the meme. It's everywhere now. But, I want to be invited to so-and-so's funeral. So, or I want them to be at my funeral so they can let me down one more time. And but that ego or that person that doesn't. How do you deal with that? Internal, do you have a strong, it looked like employee satisfaction. You've been ranked high in multiple, surveys for employee satisfaction. How do you build that in the culture, like daily? Like, how is that implemented?
Yeah, so a lot of, I think the one you're referencing is Inc. Best Workplaces or Fortune 100 Best Places to Work. And those are really great because the employees apply on our behalf. And so they're the ones that are filling out the surveys and telling the world what it's really like to work at Michigan Software Labs. So they are actually the ones, telling the world what it's like to really work there. And so for us, I think it does go into this this idea of what is going to be best for the team member, and trying to prioritize what some of their needs are. And so, for example, we do things that are pretty strange. Like we pay, 100% of the premiums for healthcare. We have all of the ideas of, the benefits in terms of what we're paying for professional development, and sending them to conferences for continuous learning and trying to, really just pour into them as individuals. But a lot of what it comes down to is where do they want to be in 5 years and how can we help them get there? And so we're just kind of coming alongside them and trying to enable them to be successful.
So you're actually looking, it's hard in today's culture, sometimes in the business climate, they are an investment. You hear a lot of lip service, but that takes time though, doesn't it? To ask an employee and actually care about the answer, where do they want to be in 5 years? And so you've built in, so I just think that's fantastic. A lot of, have you seen that? Does that lead to longevity? Does that lead, just general satisfaction? What are some markers you've seen?
Yeah, we have really low turnover. And then one of the other things is, do I have a friend at work? And we're pretty high on those, on that one as well. And so low on attrition, and then, high on people that care about me at work. And so we continue to watch that for loyalty and trying to, really encourage our team as they're growing. And so a lot of our new employees have come through referral, and they're saying, hey, I've got a friend, that might need a, role. And so we're able to look out for that. But the other thing that we've decided to do is rather than have 40 hours billable, which most consultancies do, we take 4 hours and we put that into professional development, into that curiosity of R&D and trying to learn, and we cut that right out of their work, and so they actually have dedicated time 4 hours a week to really pour into those areas.
Yeah, what a great benefit. In your world, then it seems your partner is a real technical guy. How would you consider your role? You said you love people, and do you like to go? Are you sales, for the lack of a better term? Where does your role fit in currently?
Yeah, so a lot of times I am kind of on the early end of when a new client reaches out to us and says, hey, we want you to come into our business. We'll take a tour. We'll do some, strategy around, all right, how could this be a fit, kind of qualifying and trying to work with them. And then we will step into it, and I'll bring much smarter people than me to the table where they can help solve those problems. And so, but a lot of times I am pretty early on in the relationship, and then I'm doing a lot of different speaking engagements or opportunities to share who we are in the community.
Yeah, I love that. And you also write. I found, I don't know, I think a quick Google search, there were a dozen or more articles. I'm sure you have a lot more. But it looks like at Forbes primarily and other.
Yep.
What kind of outlet, or what does that do for you? Writing and thinking about, tell me more about that, because it looks like you do a lot of it.
Yeah, so it's actually started on an airplane. I was just like, I pulled out notes and I just started writing articles, and then I was able to get into the Forbes Technology Council, which allows you to actually publish articles on Forbes.com and write also for Fast Company, which is another site.
Yeah.
But really just thinking about trying to tell the stories of what our clients are facing, what their anxiety is. So I have a new article coming out in Forbes about tech anxiety, because leaders in the C-suite especially are really concerned about what are all these new trends going to do to my business model, and the everything's moving.
Absolutely.
And so how can we deal with that anxiety? And so we kind of lay out 4 different areas of things that they can think about.
Because I love that. I mean, to be thinking and writing, I had a professor in grad school say, to write is to think. Mm-hmm. We can have a lot of ideas, but when you start writing, and all of a sudden you see it, that's great. And that's a great transition. Let me ask you a little bit more. How has the explosion of interest in artificial intelligence, obviously it's been around, 60 years, the ideas, et cetera. But it seems with ChatGPT and others, the last 2 years, there's been an explosion in interest, even though companies were using it before that. How has it affected your business or just the software development, the expectations? How has the last 2 years changed, if at all, for what you do?
Yeah, it's certainly changed. Everything's getting, timelines are getting shorter, expectations are getting higher as you think about that. But, for us, we really see it as a positive change. And so a lot of people are coming to us, what's your opinion? Is this going to disrupt software development? And I think in the short term, it is having, great improvements. There's ways that you can submit your code and see it being reviewed and making suggestions to help you be more efficient and effective in what you're writing. I wish I would have had that back in 2008. Yeah. It would have made me a better programmer. And so we see it as humans plus technology is going to equal the best result versus, one, winning over the other. And so we treat it like a work colleague. AI is like a work colleague, and you're going to interact with AI. It's going to teach you things. You're going to teach it things. And being able to effectively learn how to communicate with AI will make everyone better.
Okay, I'm going to have to stop you there. Let's dig just for a second. Your idea, and I know you brought this up very briefly in our Business Matters conference. That we've had recently. So tell me, this AI as work colleague, and I know you're quoted as using this. That was the first time I'd ever thought of it that way. And as you know, I like to dig into these topics a little bit. And a quote I found from you is, it's like any tool that needs to be optimized. You're going to have to get to know it. The more we treat this tool like that, the less we'll feel threatened by it. Mm-hmm. And so when I hear AI as colleague, I mean, I'm a manager, I'm a director, right? I manage a department of people, always have, and I was, after you first said that, I literally, like I told you before the show started, I haven't stopped thinking about it because I look at my, I'm like, do I look at my employees like tools? Do I look at them like, I see AI, and I think even tool is philosophically fraught a little bit with tech, how we talk about our tech, and that's probably whole nother podcast. but this idea of AI as colleague, I mean, I don't look at my team members that need to be optimized. There's language that's smuggled in or obscures, a little bit. I think Neil Postman, he wrote "I'm Using Ourselves to Death." That's his most popular book. But Technopoly and then A Return to the 18th Century. He has these really interesting books. But he has these 6 questions. And one of the questions he says about technology to interrogate any new technology is, what changes in language are being enforced by new technologies, and what is being gained or lost by such changes? And so that's, those are the things that are bouncing around. When you say AI as colleague, is that dehumanizing? I guess maybe that at base value, that's what I'm kind of thinking. Explain more. And I know you don't mean that,
No, yeah. Language is important, and for us, I'm continuing to talk about it in a positive way. Obviously there are threats, and we've got to think about those. So, one that we learned about the other day was thinking about the autonomous, road that they're setting up in Texas, and they're going to have a whole lane, just dedicated to autonomous vehicles, mainly trucks. And I think it's a 21-mile stretch that they're starting with.
Right.
And people are starting to say, well, if AI is doing all the driving, what's going to happen to, me as a driver? Will I still be able to make a decision to go out and drive a car, or am I too much at risk, to the road and things like that? And so I do think we need to be really careful and cautious about language and how we're talking about it. And from our perspective, I think the work colleague example is really just thinking about it as it relates to, your office environment or your work environment. And we're trying to see it as what are the benefits for you to interact with your colleague. And so I think with a new hire, there is some nuance with that. And, if you were bringing on a new person to your team, there'd be some things that you really get along with them on and some things that you don't. And so figuring out what that nuance is, I think will be important for leaders.
Okay. Because when I think about it, there's, I have a good friend of mine, they had a Alexa in the house, and they found, he tells the story of their children, like abused, like yelling at Alexa would get something wrong or and they would talk to it in such a way that you would hopefully, never talk to another human.
Yeah.
Very rudely, and so I think, if I understand, they just got rid of it.
Yeah.
And because of it was forming the kids in a certain way towards technology that they just didn't like, and that that's different, of course, for every family. But that's kind of what I think about. Like I don't think about Salesforce or something. When I come into work, what I'm working on my desk, and then I look out at my team in the cube farm. I fundamentally don't think of those the same.
Yeah.
So the AI as colleague is just so intriguing to me on that level as I'm thinking through what it means to be human versus how I'm utilizing a technology, for whatever purpose.
Yeah. You'll love this story, but I've got 4 daughters, and our oldest daughter the other day asked the HomePod. We have an Apple HomePod.
Sure.
And she said, hey, Siri, can you order me an Alexa? Because it wasn't pulling up the right weather or something like that. And I'm like, you better be careful how you treat Siri. Yeah. She's going to, she rules everything someday. But, just that idea that we do need to figure out, what are the human ways that we're interacting with technology if we are going to, set the example of how we want to be treated. So it's going to be a really interesting dynamic. I think you mentioned it, but just the importance of how important language is and what we're talking about, I think will be really key.
So philosophically, I mean, we can go, we could get really deep really quick. But what you're trying to say is it obviously not going away. And it will be present more. Is that right?
Yeah, this is the VCR, and we still have the DVD to come, and the Blu-ray, and then we've got it embedded everywhere, and it's in the cloud, and it exists without physical. So I think this is the version 1, and we're all excited about it. We can play videotapes and record our own, and it's really exciting. But the future is going to get incrementally more complex as we think about rolling out these new tools.
So I mean, this is as I wrote the question, I was laughing at it. So I realized, but to put on your prophet hat, in this space, 2 to 3 years seems like forever.
Yeah.
But in 2 to 3 years, are you seeing certain industries? I speak a lot about technology disruption and the future of work. A lot of people like, will this take jobs? Or there's angles on that conversation. And I talk with people all over the country, and everybody has an opinion. This is something you can really relate to, to almost anybody about. And are there industries, do you think, that are more ripe for this kind of future, or is this really going to touch? There's a lot of conversation about white collar is going to take another hit or a hit, different than some of the blue collar industrial displacements, of the past. Are there industries that you're thinking or seeing? And again, not to put you on the prophetic throne.
Certainly, healthcare is really the first one because they have enormous worker shortages, and as I think 46% of the the boomers are entering into this,
Right.
where they need increased health care. And so I think what's going to happen, I heard a talk from, a chief consultant on this idea, but everyone's job within the hospital will be, segmented out. And so right now, if 40% of a nurse's job is actually typing and, dictate or, understanding information that's happening in the room, how could that be replaced by technology? And then that 40% of that nurse's job can be, taking care of patients and being more effective in the hospital setting. So I think we'll have a lot of that where it's not that the entire job goes away, but maybe one segment of
Tasks.
the job.
Yeah, that's the conversation is the tasks. Yeah.
Tasks are going away. And so, is that a positive thing? I mean, we don't have buggy whips anymore. I mean, we don't have all these, typists. I mean, all these old roles needed to be adapted and switched. And I actually think it will destroy a ton of jobs, but it will create even more jobs because of that trend.
Yeah, from an economic historian perspective or ethical, it absolutely right. We don't have buggy whips. The amount you can Google that. I don't have it on the top of my head, but the number is astounding. How many horses there were in 1900 versus how many horses there were by 1950. Like somebody actually did that work in America, and it's like 10%. I mean, it was catastrophic to how many horses were in America, and so that the buggy whip, et cetera, that follows. But Carl Benedict Frey, in his book *The Technology Trap* from 2019, he's very pro-tech, very probably techno-optimist in that regard. But as an economic historian whose specialty is technology, a reminder he has in the book over and over is that usually it takes 2 to 3 generations. And that really in industrial revolutions there were revolutions, literally, and there were upheavals and things. And so to not take it lightly, that I think sometimes we talk very glibly about, these tasks will change, these jobs will change, but more will be created, which I think is historically true. I mean, almost anybody who studies this, yes.
Yeah, we were all farmers, at one point.
Oh, yeah. Now 1.8% of Americans are directly involved in any kind of agrarian pursuit. 1.8.
Wow, yeah.
And so, yes, absolutely that's true. But then you have this, on the flip side, you can look at, the family farm. All farms are huge and industrial, and that's hyperbole, not all of them, but the majority of them, and the efficiencies that come from you can speak of good and bad. That come from these issues. And so I'm always thinking about, and you're in it, and have you seen this is a broad question, have any of your clients ever come back and asked you to change something because of an ill effect? Or I don't know if your kind of industry is one and done, or do you have ongoing relationships with clients? Is that how that works, or is there any kind of process that way as you've seen it in your 14 years?
Yeah, I can't think of a time where we had to change. Obviously, technology is never done, software is never done, and so we're always constantly working on behalf. And we still have some of our earliest clients because you kind of learn their business and they learn about your approach. And if you're continuing to deliver value, they're going to want to keep you versus trying to find somebody else.
Fair enough, yeah.
Harder to relate with. And so I can't think of an exact time where we've had to go back because it was displacing their business model. It almost makes me think back to Blockbuster and Netflix, where
what's Blockbuster?
What is a Blockbuster? Yeah. I still carry around my Blockbuster card in my wallet.
Do you really? So, that's great.
I'll pull that out. I don't know if it's useful. I think there are some stores in Alaska still.
Really? I heard there was just one. Somebody told, there's one left.
We'll have to go visit and check it out. But that idea that disruption will happen and it will create new opportunity, I think is really going to be key. A lot of the industries that we serve, AI is starting. It started 5 years ago or 7 years ago, but it starts with pricing, and you create models to help you improve how your pricing is going to be pushed out into the marketplace. Then it moves to a recommendation engine. And you remember seeing this on the bottom of every Amazon email you've ever had. You bought these, so you might like these.
Exactly.
And companies started to do the recommendation engine inside their company, outside their company. And now it is going more generative and thinking of new ideas and helping enable different departments, obviously marketing and all these operations, they're getting value from that. And so I think that to see, where the end happens, I don't know if we know that. And of course, I've got a device right next to us here, the new Apple Vision Pro, which I'm really curious to see as you put this on.
Yeah, I can't wait to put it on. Yeah, so those of you listening, just he brought, just in the past few days, the Apple Vision Pro was released, and Mark brought a copy, and so I get to I've read a lot of articles about it, but I get to put it on and try it over the next.
You might never come back.
I might not. Yeah, it'll immerse
We'll call
me.
your family.
Yeah, exactly.
He's gone.
Dan's gone.
He's in Europe. Dan's over there.
He's been downloaded. Well, so that not to again, this is probably a whole different discussion, but is that ever part of the discussion? Have you heard, of companies that think through, is this in the design or the consultative phase that you work with them? Do they, because when you say efficiencies, I think most business owners learn, is that less people, because people are the most expensive in almost any endeavor.
Yeah.
And so is that ever discussed? Like what effect will this have on other, like the interdisciplinary nature of if we implement this here, what other effects, countervailing effects will it have over here? Is that ever?
Yeah, they think about it. I think it usually comes up with how they're going to, go to market. And so how this new technology that they're going to develop is going to disrupt not only their business model, but other business models. And so that's why we start, we build a business model canvas with them, and we start to see how the interchange is going to happen between all these different channels. And I think it's an important consideration to make sure you're disrupting yourself and to try and, be create this whole new efficient business model that's going to serve you for the long term. And so we were just with a local company a few days ago, and they started in a very small industry, and now they've grown into, all these other larger ones because they took risks and because they didn't say, we're never going to innovate. We're only going to do this one thing. And I think companies have to do that. They have to adapt and think about new technologies that aren't going to be, even invented yet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Are there any areas that you think are in technology broadly? I mean, you're in the software space, et cetera, but that are more hype. There's a lot of conversation about because you mentioned this road in Texas.
Yeah.
I mean, self-driving cars or trucks or that conversation's been around a long time, and I think people were expecting by 2024 more Jetson than and it just hasn't arrived.
Yeah.
And obviously there's still monies being dumped, into it. And this takes time, but it seems like sometimes there's an awful lot of, I talk with people that use Mid-Journey or they use the different versions of ChatGPT, and it's obviously getting better. Did you see some of those YouTube commercials like create a Pizza Hut or create a pizza commercial, and it's like a fever dream, that the early Mid-Journey was like I was on LSD watching this commercial. But now obviously it's brilliant, and we're less than 2 years from that point.
Yep.
But it's still people then are using it like industry, like you said, enterprise. It seems like a lot of people are using it for fun, or like influencers are showing what they. But it's like so like what is this actually adding value in the world? And it seems, I think that there's a disconnect there. What are there areas of hype at the moment? Not that it couldn't be in the future, but what are areas of hype that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think anything that's related to connecting technology with the body, I think is still a little bit of a ways out. And so we talked about Neuralink and how they were able to successfully have someone move the computer mouse with their brain and their mind. MIT Labs is, of course, working on some new technologies that are related to that. And so I think that might be, and they've had, flying cars and things like that. I've seen them at CES, but, actually getting governments to adopt, or FFA or whatever, to adopt that ability to fly from house to house, I think will be a ways off. But the technology of embedding in the body, I think, is a really one that we have to talk about, as leaders and as business people of, how that's going to affect things, because some people are going to have the upgrade and other people aren't. And how is it going to affect society as we're moving forward? So I'm not the right person to talk about that. You've got great, smart people to do that. But
you're seeing some of the, like you're at CES or other shows that have people are thinking about it.
Yeah, certainly. And that trend is going to be, really, it could go really fast. And so, just thinking about people that had smartphones and people that had not smartphones. And this trend and what's happening.
Well, the digital divide back in the day before smartphones.
Yeah.
That was who had the internet.
Yeah.
And who didn't. And the continent of Africa essentially leapfrogged the laptop, and they went straight mobile.
Wow. Yeah.
So Africa, they're hardly. Obviously they have laptops in Africa, but it wasn't as big of a sector because they were slower to adopt. And by the time they were boom, the mobile market, China came in, and did their thing. Huawei, and all of a sudden, boom, everybody has smartphones, and now they're a smartphone, largely a digital handheld, culture. So it's fascinating, and Mark, I really do appreciate you coming in and sharing about Michigan Software Labs. We'll leave a link in the notes to your website. And what is I'll just close with this. Like, what is your appetite right now? Are you growing? Are you wanting to, is there areas, or are you scaling to size as a manager and owner of the company? What are your hopes for the future?
Yeah, so I think continued growth, you're either growing or dying, and that for us, really our core business is services and is providing, the services to meet the client's needs. And so I think we'll continue to grow. I don't know if it'll be 40% like it was last year, but there's a lot of demand right now for what we do. And I think AI is custom software. And so we'll continue to build new tools and, new ways for people to interact with AI within their companies. And so I really see a bright future for custom software. I think the Midwest, specifically Michigan, I think we can really be innovators in this area. I think because of the humility side, and not that other areas of the country don't have that, but I do think that we have a unique position here. We're doers, and we want to get things done and really help serve others. So we're looking forward to the next years.
Well, we like to think deeply about entrepreneurship. We like to think deeply about virtuous business, and I really appreciate you sharing a little bit about your story. I love how it started, and we hope you have continued success. Thanks for being here in West Michigan.
Oh, thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark.
As always, thank you for listening. Our team loves putting this podcast together for you. It's encouraging to hear from our listeners. Feedback is incredibly important to us because it lets us know what you'd like to hear more of, including the kinds of topics you're interested in most. If you have comments, feedback, or ideas for a show topic or interesting guest, you can email our team at producer@acton.org. Until next week, for Acton Line, I'm Eric Cohn.